Thank you all for listening. I am Eddie Ryder, and this is Designers Lane podcast. I have two wonderful guests today that's building a home. I'm working with them on their design. Before we introduce and talk to them, I want to be sure and thank my sponsors. Can't do it without them. First one is Jenny Blanton. She's going to handle all of your real estate needs in Central North Carolina. So if you're building that nice addition, looking for a house that you want to buy and, plan for that, or you're looking to sell your home or something that's a little newer, reach out to her. She's going to be able to help you. Primarily Central North Carolina, Fayetteville, Pinehurst area. Again, Jenny Blanton, look her up. And then also Dogwood and Company. They will handle your large new construction, custom, any major additions and remodeling. Mostly Cary, Southern Wake County of North Carolina. Look them up, give them a call if it's something you're doing. Now, to my favorite people in the whole wide world, I'm so excited. We just had a meeting the other day. We have the Millers. We have Claudia and Alex. And you guys are from Illinois. You want to tell me where from Illinois you are?
Well, I'm from Chicago.
Chicago.
Mhm.
And Alex?
I'm actually from Greensboro, North Carolina, but I spent my last 16 years in Chicago. And so I claim Chicago as well.
Yeah, I think after a couple of years in one place, you're actually from there. The cool thing, and of course, if you're originally from the general area, we don't have the cold weather and the snow nearly as much as Chicago does. But hold on, because I checked the weather the other day, and it's really supposed to get cold here. Although, I've loved cold weather, so it's never really a big issue or a big deal for me. So let our listeners know and watchers that I sent you guys some questions, and we kind of go by that. We're going to hit some of them. We're probably going to go off topic a little bit, but it gives us a guideline. Is there a general area or reason that brought you guys from the Chicago area? And I know Claudia's already smiling. I know a lot of these answers, but I have to do them for our listeners. Is there a primary reason that brought you guys from the Chicago area that you've been at for a while too? And again, for people who don't know, we're Wake County. It's Central North Carolina. It's right in the middle of North Carolina.
Yes. My job actually offered me a management position and asked us to relocate. And so that's what moved us from the Chicago suburbs to Wake County.
I love it. And one thing with Central North Carolina is we are certainly, and as you guys hopefully live here for a long time, there's been an explosion for a while, but certainly in the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, there's a ton of growth. Research Triangle Park, we call it RTP for the people that have lived here for 100 years. It's been very fortunate that they started developing that, I believe, in the mid to the late 60s. And it's a ton of acreage, so they're able to be built out. I was fortunate enough to be on a flight with Governor Hunt a couple of years ago coming from New York City, and we talked about it, and he was explaining how long that was in the making and how to make it happen and how large it was. I didn't realize that RTP was bigger than just like 5 acres on the border of Durham and Raleigh area, that it's quite large. So that's nice. We're definitely happy that you guys came from Chicago, and you'll get a little bit of a taste of our weather coming up. But promise you won't have snow, but probably more than 12 hours that happens. So my next question I have is, what was the determining factor that you guys decided that, hey, we need an interior designer? I know a little bit of your history, and we made some jokes about the sketching and the drawing, and we certainly have a wonderful relationship. And gosh, I think we've been together now for, has it been 6+ months or close to it? It goes by relatively quickly, but it's certainly been a time. But for people that are on the fence about hiring a designer or a decorator, and I'm definitely more of a designer, what gave you the idea to do that? Is it something that you knew to start with? Or if it's like, hey, I'm busy, I have a job, and then Claudia's busy doing her thing, that we need some help doing this. And again, it's a project. And I tell people that it's an expense, and it takes a fair amount of your time to be able to accomplish.
Yeah, it definitely I mean, I run my own business, so I'm a career coach, and my husband is in tech sales. So we're not interior designers, and we know the value that it can bring, and especially with this is our second time building a home. The first time around, at least we saw a model home. We kind of knew what we liked and what we wanted to change, and kind of like the vibe and aesthetic we were going for. Again, I thought we did a really good job, but I bet you the interior designer like Eddie would have made it even wow factor. But the second time building around, there was no model home.
Right.
It's literally here's a plot of land, there's trees, and here's a blueprint. Are you guys ready to buy? There's no model homes. Apparently, North Carolina here, just houses sell so fast.
Right.
There isn't a model home. So we're both not creative like that. That is not our expertise. And we knew that investing at this amount of money, and especially for, I mean, we're planning to at least be a forever home, or a home that will, grow our family and be there for 20 plus years, that we needed to bring in a professional for something like this. And we did not want to screw it up, and we wanted to do the right thing and make it look really nice.
I love it. I always tell people, and hopefully I'll tell you enough, although I probably tell you too much. It's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of people. And again, you really become, and friends isn't really the right word, although you're certainly friendly, but you become a part of the family in a way that you're in someone's business, whether you like it or you don't, you're there. You're there for deaths, you're there for new dogs, you're there for situations that happen in the family, and vice versa. You have to have that relationship. If I'm having an off day or I'm behind on a project, I feel comfortable enough to call you guys up, knock on wood, I've not had to do that yet, and say, hey, we've got a meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I'm really behind on another project for, you guys know, multiple reasons that can happen in construction. Is it okay to move the project? And I believe that is super helpful when you start on the front side. And I can't tell you, when I travel and do shows and people shoot me messages, that we just don't know if the value is there to have a designer. And I'm the first one to tell people, it's not cheap, it's not super expensive, but it's not free. I don't work for free at McDonald's at night. I just love their fish sandwiches. But it has an expense, but hopefully there's a value that's there. And it's not all on the front side. I know that was important for you guys, and we talked about the value of having it, but it's more about what works, what doesn't work. Having, for me at least, I have a background in construction and work with multiple builders, that after a meeting or after a call, I can pick up the phone or shoot you a message and say, well, I don't think that went really well, or either it shouldn't take that long, or hey, I think the value is there. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this relationship, we really feel like you work for us, and that was important to us.
Right.
You representing us, and honestly, we feel like you've even gone above and beyond. And so the value that we saw up front has continued its way throughout the build process. And I think that's important. I think the other thing that really mattered is you've gotten to know us,
Right,
and our style, and to be a representative for us throughout this process, and to make sure that we're asking the right questions, to make sure that we're thinking about the right things. And we didn't really have that coaching the first time we went through this process. And
Right.
so we're very much appreciative of the fact that we're able to take advantage of that kind of partnership and relationship.
I love that, and I greatly appreciate it. And I'm certainly not the only one in the world that does this, but I try and take it to a little bit of a different level, because there's a lot of factors to it. And I want our listeners to know, and I'm sure you guys have figured it out, this doesn't happen overnight. It's scary when people call me and say, hey, I need a designer and I'm framing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, you should have hired me or a designer months before you started framing, because you have to know what you like and what you don't like. I recorded a podcast before and we laughed about, you guys know how much I love gold fixtures. And that's just life. And you joke about it and you make some of it work. We go, we've been to tile selections, we've been to hardware and we look and we know that you guys like particular things. And I try and make it work the best I can. I still throw a jab here and there that's there to make sure you know it, but that's the part of the process. I mean, and the goal is always that you love it, you want to have fun with it, and it's not that you're ever uncomfortable with something. Again, it's a big deal. It's a lot of time. It's an investment in finances. It's an investment in your future. And you don't want to get in and say, gosh, I wish I would have done this differently, or I wish I would have picked out the other top. And I'm a firm believer of being honest, although it's probably why I lose at poker is I'm a terrible liar, is that I don't think I could lie to you guys or any of my clients because I turn red and my ears turn pink. It's something I can't do. But you're also paying for an honest opinion that's in there, what I feel looks good, what doesn't look good, and also educate you why I don't, what's not important. So I think that's really nice. I have to tell everyone, we talked right when we logged in that I love your doors behind you. And it's so odd that we did renderings, which we'll talk about in a minute, that had dark doors. So I love it. And you guys are living in an apartment temporarily. So let me know how that goes. I'm dealing with that right now with another client. So I had to cut my phone off because I couldn't deal with all the hate mail that was coming. So never a good thing. Next thing we want to discuss are surprises during the process. There's the big S word that we all hate. And I, again, very honest up front, it happens. Are there one or two things that so far, and just to let people know, we're at past framing, and hopefully today, tomorrow, yesterday, they have started the rough end because you had the stuff for the air conditioning in. Have there been some surprises for you that you are not aware of that other than financial, which there always is, but that has popped to you and like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about this or we weren't expecting that? Because you guys are both very list people. You know what's going on.
I'm sorry.
You got it.
I will say the first surprise was the amount of selections we needed to make that were not upfront, were not shared upfront, that are important decisions to make, but were not really included.
Right.
And the cost of those selections and those decisions. And so when we first created our budget, we did not anticipate that we would need another bucket of funds to support some things that we thought were going to be a part of the package. And I'll say one other thing is during the kind of the current economic conditions, inflation. So
Right.
planning for that, when we originally looked at setting aside our budget, is understanding what that variable cost will be and where does that rank from a priority perspective as we look at, upgrading certain, portions and features. What do we keep? What's most important?
Right.
What's a want versus a need? And as we look to build a family, it just, it's almost like you can't plan for that. But I think that the one thing that was surprising is that it forced us to make some real decisions, with your help, and to figure out, what are the must-haves with the budget we set aside over a year ago, and what are we willing to kind of let go and maybe look at down the line. I would say those are kind of the two things that kind of caught me off guard the most.
I think you're spot on, and it's always very challenging in the beginning because I like to get straight to the chase when people call me and interview me about a job. It's about being creative, but a lot of it's about money. And often, I hate to say this, the budgets or allowances that are given to buyers, to you guys, and probably 90% of other customers are short. And which is why I asked I don't know if it was the first call, but it was probably the second call, is, hey, do you have a budget? Do you have a line item? Let me look at it. And I think before we talked about gold, purple, green, yellow, I looked at that and looked at some of your inspiration pictures that you sent me, and I was like, oh my gosh, we are off by more than $10 here. And how important is this to you? Do you have some more money to put in the bucket, or are we going to have to take money out of another bucket to put in there? I always try and give a realistic budget from the front side. You guys brought me in a little bit later in the process. So you had hired your contractor and had made some selections, but you weren't in the framing. You had owned your lot. I usually try and tell people, or not usually, I do tell people to have a slush fund, to have a variance, report, just something to set aside. Do you think that's relatively important? And for people that don't have that, I tell people 10%, and some of them look at me like I've got horns on my head. And I know where we are, and that's a must. I mean, if you came in and other people have come in with 3 and 4 and 5%, I'm thinking, unless you have allowances and budget that blows everything out of the water, you're going to be in trouble. I mean, or you're not going to have any furniture. You're going to be sitting on lawn chairs inside. I mean, would you agree that it's important to have that slush or that variance going into construction? For one, just inflation, the cost of goods. If you're bid on a project, a year ago, I mean, instead of costing $50,000 to frame the exact same house could cost $70,000 or $80,000. And guess what? You got to pay for it. I mean, you don't get it for free. The builders don't work for net zero. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's just so many variables. Like you mentioned, inflation, COVID happening, shipping and materials, the price of material overall. And I mean, honestly, like usually, like even in our previous home, when we look at a model home, they always give you with the upgrades. The model home always has upgrades. They don't give you like the standard what the home looks like. So even if you're like, well, I love what the model home looks like, if you're even lucky enough to see a model home, there's a lot of upgrades already involved in it. And, one thing that we learned from our first house that we built is a lot of these things we didn't know about, or we didn't understand the importance of it. And then we realized that we had cardboard, like almost doors that they would just pop holes in it, or even our garage door. We were not even living there for 2 months, and there was already a hole in the garage door. So we knew that we didn't want cardboard material. We're putting in money, we're building it. We want this to last a while, not like feel like there's a wind and all of a sudden our door gets knocked down. So we really had to make that decision of, okay, these things are very important to us. And yes, I mean, you even tell us sometimes 10 to 30%, we don't know what's going to look like. You're going to make a selection now and it might be discontinued, which it has happened already for some of those items that we picked out. And then we have to choose another another selection, and then that costs more. And then that's the price right now. We're not going to order that until, we're at this stage of the house building. And by then, who knows what the price is. And there's just so many variables happening into it, especially right now.
There's lots of variables. You mentioned about punching through a door. I laugh, and it's one of the, although I don't say punch through the door, but I always have a conversation. Most people don't know that there are different types of doors. There's hollow, there's semi-solid, there's solid, there's wood, there's pressed, there's, there's stained, there's something that you painted. And often if you have 20, 30, 40 doors in your home, and the allowance is for $120 a door, and the door that you really like is $300 a door, I mean, that adds up. And then that money has to come from somewhere, where in the very front side, if you knew that factor, you may say, you know what, I absolutely don't want hollow core doors because I don't want a hole in them. So, or I don't want pressed doors, so we have to make that allowance. I'm looking at the hardware by your right ear, Claudia. Same thing, is that often people will have an allowance for that hardware on your door that's, say, $30 or $40 a door, which is reasonable, but I call it Lowe's, Home Depot. God knows I love them. But it's simple, where you go look at hardware that's 100, 120, 150. I like to say it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but 30 doors, 40 doors times $100 over budget is $3,000 to $5,000. Are you okay with that? And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money in the front, but when we look at our list, and I can $3,000 you to death that's in there. And I don't make money off of it. I get a paycheck from you guys and that's it. I'm always shopping for the better deal. But it's like both of you and Alex suggested, you have to compromise. How important is that? And again, doors I think are really important. Lighting fixtures coming up are really important. Tile that we made selections the other day was really important to you. I think we revised that 3 different times because it's other numbers came in and you're like, wow, this is not what I thought, and this is what is important to me, and this is what I want. I encourage people to do your pop and wow and bang in the areas that you see the most, and then cut back in other secondary areas. And then that's ultimately what happens, but and delays make a major factor into it. Speaking of the delays, sorry, that's Charlie, is that did the delays play any process in any thought in your decision making? I know it did on your refrigerator, because when you first met, that was probably the second thing you told me, is that we've ordered our refrigerator already because it's going to take 10 years to get in. So did the delays that we've had over the last couple of years play in the selection process at all?
It did. Yeah, our appliances and windows, we were advised to order as soon as possible. And we wish we would have. We think we did very well there, but it would have been great to have your coaching through that stage. And so we did have to kind of hit the gas out the gate, and then things stalled, right? So
Right.
One of the things we had a little bit of uncomfort with is the pace of this process. So there were moments where out the gate, we were accelerated. Then things slowed down drastically because of delays. And, when we went and made a selection, we were then told to, have an option 2 and an option 3 and be
Right.
prepared to have to select one. And so things got quiet for a bit, but, working with you helped us stay organized on what should flow next. And so we tried to use that time productively to at least get a feel for what we liked,
Right.
so that when, we're asked to make that decision and things speed up again, it doesn't catch us off guard. So just being able to be comfort with not knowing the speed, the speed ups and the slow downs throughout the process, and know that it won't be linear. There'll be a roller coaster at times. Was a little unsettling at first, but now we've become better at managing that process down the back half.
There's definitely some ups and downs and fast and slows. It's like hurry up and wait in many of the applications by far.
And I would say there's just a lot of variables happening, especially now, because first it was permits. Well, first it was doing I think this is before we might have brought you in, Eddie, but because we had someone else, but it was just iterations of like, I think this should be going this way. How can we change this room, where the door is located? So getting through that stage and then submitting it to permits. Permits is taking such a long time. Yep. And I know there's a lot of building happening here in North Carolina. So that took its time. Then it was, it's hard to get labor because there's so much construction going on
Right.
in North Carolina here. So there have been so many variables happening. But yes, I mean, we already knew from our last house that it took our fridge almost 6 to 8 months to get delivered. We were using a Yeti cooler and our wine fridge, using it as a fridge because we did not have we moved into our home without a fridge.
Right.
And we knew we need to order this now because I don't want to live off of a Yeti cooler and a wine cooler as our fridge for the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very true. Some of them are 12 months. I just had the Ferguson's regional with me, and some of them are still at 12 months, which is unbelievable. And they don't see that changing anytime soon. So you do have to plan for it. One thing I want to talk in before, believe it or not, we're at 25 minutes and Zoom's going to cut us off in a couple. I wanted to get in renderings, something new that I've started doing in the last couple of years with you guys, and you liked it. How important do you feel that is with, again, I think everybody is like me and can visualize everything in 3D and they can't. How important is that to you?
It was non-negotiable. When we were looking at interior designers, they had to have rendering. And that's one thing I really liked about you is you had, well, I love your style already, but you were able to provide us that rendering because we didn't have a model home. We literally just had blueprints and then a lot with a lot of trees on it. And
A lot
I'm
of
not that
trees.
great of, yeah, a lot of trees. I don't have that great of imagination, and the rendering is probably making it feel real for us because we were able to say like, yes, that's exactly what we want. And we want it to look like, and there's enough space. And we're also, I'm terrible at spacey. Like, I think it's like, this looks so small. And you're like, what are you talking about? This is a huge house. I'm like, I don't know. It feels kind of tiny.
Right.
Now that it's being built, I'm like, oh yeah, it is a really big home. So the rendering was definitely a non-negotiable, and you did a really great job with that.
Yeah, the renderings help, and it's something new that with the technology that came out, AI, which Alex is probably thrilled that I know what that word is. It just can learn a lot and happen, and then just even one of the programs I use in the last probably 6 months, it does all of the trim for you, which was amazing, and it does help. And what I love about it is it shows you things that are minor that you don't know and see till you physically get in the job site. As an example, the vendor walk that we had the other day, which is where we meet certain vendors and we go through on your fireplace, which was a really big ordeal for us. We wanted it to be nice and pretty and cool and a design feature. We had to do a drop down soffit on left and right side because of the venting for the fireplace. Well, that wasn't in my drawings ever. And it would have been nice to put it in and be able to look at it. It certainly wasn't a deal breaker by any means, but it's nice that you have to adjust and create and design on the fly. And that's a great example. And also laying out that furniture where, again, I can look at something and say, okay, well, these pieces are going to fit, these pieces are not going to fit. Your basement was another example. It was like we want a pool table and this table and a sofa and a pit and this and that. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, where's the other house? So when you're able to put that stuff in and see it, it's not just my word, which I know carries a lot of weight, but I can explain this is why I don't believe is going to work out. The space planning is not going to play out with everything. I think a huge mistake people make is they just cram I call it Texas-itis. They cram too much stuff. It's too big. It's too large of a scale, and you can't do that. You guys are leaning a little bit more modern in your flavor. That is definitely not modern. I mean, you have to play with that, and being able to see it is nice. And I think that we've changed a couple of factors. I know the tile backsplash and the wet bar in the basement, we moved a little bit, talked you guys into tiling an entire wall versus doing, or at least I think I did, instead of just doing it behind the cabinet. I think you have to see that, in person. Well, not in person, but a 3D rendering, you're able to see it and say, okay, well, this is important, this isn't important. And when the budgets and the numbers come back, we talk about overages. And, I was the first one to say that, oh my gosh, this backsplash is going to be a lot. But we love it. And then when you kind of get the number and you start weighing things out, what's more important, what's not as important, this is a cool look, and my opinion was I'd rather you have more of the tile than an expensive tile because, again, it's the layer, it's the light, it's the cabinets, it's the countertop. Everything layering together is nice because if you had a fabulous $10,000 backsplash and crappy light fixtures that hang on a extension cord and a horrible plywood countertop, no one's going to come in and say, ooh, I love your backsplash. They're going to say, what did you do? And then I'm going to say,
Yeah.
don't tell them that you know me. So, I mean, it's a really, really good idea. And I think it's nice. It's something different that's in the industry. And I will say, I'm glad that you pushed me to do it. I've done it roughly on a few other projects, but again, I've been doing this for a long time. We had to render that stuff by hand. So, I mean, just into probably the last 5 or 6 years, the technology has come out where you can do these renderings, and then it was horrifically expensive. Now it's not as bad, and I can't imagine drawing a room because you can't drag the chair and move it around. Now you don't like the chair there. Oh, well, 5 seconds later, you move it around. And it may not be the exact color white, but it's close enough, that gives you the general idea. And for us, we could see what physically fit in the space. Oh my gosh, these windows, they got to come in, they got to come out. And that works in it. So I'm happy to hear that you guys valued it on the inside. I also think that it played a major role on the exterior with the different color of the brick and the soffit and the trim and the box trim. Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. Curb appeal was super important to us, and that visual of what we were going to be pulling up to, we wanted to feel that. And so you creating that rendering and that visual allowed us to feel like, the money that we're spending, we're getting our dream home. And so we if we were to do this again, we would ask to render and leverage that technology. It's a game changer, and it's really helped us feel more comfortable about the decisions we've made throughout this process.
You
And we would
cover
have
a
brought you in earlier.
Well, thank you. I was going to suggest that too. I love to hear that. And ultimately, I know that there's an associated expense with the interior rendering and even more so with the exterior rendering. And I will say, full disclosure, I'm the first one to say, why in the world do we need to render their outside? It's going to be beautiful. We can do paint samples, but if you're not visual and you don't see it, you don't know. And ultimately, it could be the best, even with the samples, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 that you ever spent. Because again, if the designer has to spend extra time on meeting with you, you still have to pay for that. So it's almost a lateral move that's on there. Excuse me. I think it's absolutely wonderful and beautiful, and that it worked out and you were happy for it. Are there 3 items that you could tell me or tell us that you think are really important? Excuse me, in the process?
The first item I would say is have a budget, and also have the slush funds to the side, just for ease and comfort going through this process, because there are always costs that will pop up that you want to be prepared for. I'll give one more, and I'll turn it over to my wife. The interior designer option, and especially working with you, Eddie, is a no-brainer. And I think planning for that, budgeting for that cost, and being able to have a coach and a teammate and a partner throughout the process has really made this experience manageable, enjoyable, and for the length of time that it's taken due to things out of our control.
Or out of control.
It's great to have someone that we get along with and value, that's credible.
Right.
That's important. So making that right selection up front, I would say, is kind of my second important factor. And I'll give my wife the last one.
Love it.
I would think just make sure that you plan in advance what you wanted. So for example, we knew we wanted a pool. That was, again, another non-negotiable. So we were very particular at location, if it was permit available, all these things. And we vocalized that to you, we vocalized to the builder and everyone. And we almost had a scare where they're like, well, we don't think we can build a
It's
pool.
gonna
At
fit.
that point, I'm like, I'm walking away. This is a
Right.
non-negotiable. But we just had the wrong permit plans that showed that we actually could build a nice sized pool. But had we not been vocal and had known that up front, then we probably could have been in that situation. Or they actually moved some things around because it's a septic tank. They moved it in order to give us enough space for that pool. But again, had we not communicated or known that or said that right off the bat, we would have been in deep trouble. And honestly, I would have said, let's just walk away.
It was tough.
Not moving in there. There's no way. That was a monster. I think planning and having
It's
a
tough.
great team overall will set you up for success.
I agree. Guys, it's about to cut me off. And then it sounds like I'm also choking to death, which I'm not. Thank you so much. I am excited for your house. We're at a wonderful stage. Rough ends happening, roofs going on, great weather. It's going to look beautiful. Thank you so much for your advice. Excited for all of our listeners to get some ideas from you guys. And we will talk to you real soon. What a wonderful show. What a wonderful call, Zoom, that we had. Zoom call with Alex and Claudia. Love working with clients who are building a new project and they can share their experiences. That's so nice. Their experience is what is leading me to my terrific 3 tips for this podcast. Kind of recapping a little bit of what they talked about. 1, renderings. They are so incredibly helpful for your interior, your furniture placement, having a really good understanding, the spacing, the area that you're going to have. definitely consider the renderings for your project, both on the inside and the outside. Number two, vendor walks, really important. We've talked about this in the past. Once that roof goes on and your framing happens, meet with your primary vendors. That's your heating and ventilation, your electrician, your plumber, your anything that's going to go on the inside. You want to meet with those people separately, at least for 30 minutes or an hour, and have an understanding where everything is going to go that is associated with that vendor. And the third, but definitely not last, understand your cost, understand your real cost, and have a contingency or a slush fund. I would say at least 10%, not of the cost of the land, but the cost to build your home. So if you're spending $1 million on building your home, sticks and bricks, I would at least put $100,000, if not $150,000, set aside on the project. So if there's inflationary costs that you have no control over, you decide that you want something beautiful and nice and you have to have it, you have the budget for it and you don't have to put it off. Those are really big factors. So remember these 3 tips on your next remodel or your next new construction project, and you'll be okay and not stressed out. Don't want to be stressed out on your project. No fun. Wrapping this podcast up, want to thank my 2 sponsors I have. Dogwood and Company is going to handle any of your new construction needs or remodeling more in Central North Carolina. Give them a call, see if it's something they can help you out with. Don't forget to plan. It takes a little bit of time to do that. And then also Jenny Blanton. She's going to handle all of your real estate needs again in Central North Carolina, down near Pinehurst, Fayetteville area, Cary. Give her a call if you're buying or selling your home, need something new, need something old, want to refreshen it a little bit. Give her a call and she can help you out. Thanks everyone for listening. Want to encourage you to like and subscribe to Designers Lane podcast. This way, whenever there's a new podcast that comes out, you get an alert, you know what's happening. You can listen to it either in your car or if you're at the gym. You can also watch it on YouTube and listen to it on your favorite platform. So don't forget, we're just not on one area. There are a couple. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great day, and we will talk to you real soon.